Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 759, April 22nd, 2019, Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Houston, we have a problem. Yes, we do. The excellent work of Sundance over at Conservative Treehouse has focused in on a date in the Mueller report where it talks about when Papadopoulos shared with a foreign official this information, allegedly, that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton. And up until this time, we've all been working from the assumption that that was Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. But if you look at the Mueller report, it gives a date. It is not the same date as the actual date that both Papadopoulos and Downer himself and the Australian government are going with. Different dates. We saw that if you looked at Conservative Treehouse toward the end of last week, you saw they put up the letter and actually the docs that the Australian government sent literally on the day the Mueller report was released. And there they show the date that the meeting was set up between Papadopoulos and Downer. And the date that the meeting was set up was May 6th. And it was set up by Erica Thompson. So on the 6th is when the meeting was set up. But the meeting didn't take place until the 10th. But if you look at the Mueller report, it says that the information was passed to Downer, or it doesn't say Downer, it says to a government official on the 6th. So the Mueller report clearly cannot be talking about the meeting between Papadopoulos and Downer because it didn't happen on the 6th. It happened on the 10th. Let me break it down for you a little more. The exact wording in the Mueller report is that, quote, suggested to a representative of a foreign government. And the full paragraph reads, Papadopoulos suggested to a representative of a foreign government that the Trump campaign had received indications from the Russian government that it could assist the campaign through the anonymous release of information that would be damaging to the rotten Reverend Clinton. So we have Papadopoulos, and we have Alexander Downer, and we have the Australian government actually producing the memo that was created through official channels for the Australian government for both the memo that set up the meeting and the memo after the meeting that Downer created. So, as you look at it in the Mueller report, Weissman says that the date that this meeting occurred, where Papadopoulos suggested to a representative of a foreign government, was May the 6th of 2016. But Papadopoulos, Downer, and the Australian government say it was May the 10th. So what did happen on May the 6th? Well, on the morning of May the 6th, Papadopoulos, and this has been confirmed by Papadopoulos. This is in the Mueller report, but Papadopoulos has also confirmed this, that on the 6th of May, Papadopoulos was contacted by and met with DIA, that would be Defense Intelligence Agency officers, Terrence Dudley and Greg Baker, who worked out of the U.S. Embassy in London. They are the ones who put Papadopoulos in contact with their colleague, who is Erica Thompson. She was Downer's associate and also the honeypot in the story. Now, Erica Thompson introduced herself or passed herself off to Papagalopoulos as a senior advisor to Downer, who is part of and they both are part of the Australian High Commission, which is a lot like a foreign ambassador. In the U.S., we call it a foreign ambassador. They call it the Australian High Commission. So she passed herself off as a senior advisor to Downer, which she may very well be. But the fact is, she is known, and Papagalopoulos was told by several of his Israeli contacts that she is in fact Australian intelligence. And we know that Downer was head of Australia's intelligence agency for 13 years. Downer and Erica Thompson are intelligence people. And the meeting was set up by Erica Thompson on May the 6th when she met with Papagalopoulos. Shortly after, Papagalopoulos had been approached and met with these two DIA officers, Terrence Dudley and Greg Baker. So what we have is on May the 6th, Baker and Dudley, these two DIA officials working out of the London embassy, the U.S. Embassy in London, approach Papagalopoulos. They turn him on to Erica Thompson, the honeypot, the assistant of Downer, and she schedules this meeting with Papagalopoulos and Downer to happen 4 days later on May the 10th. But the problem is the Mueller report says that Papagalopoulos suggested to a representative of a foreign government on May the 6th that the Trump campaign had received indications from the Russian government that it could assist the campaign through the anonymous release of information that could be damaging to the rotten Reverend Clinton. So something's going on here with the dates. If in fact the May the 6th meeting is where the information was passed from Papagalopoulos to a representative of a foreign government, then they are not talking about Alexander Down the Hatch Downer, because Papagalopoulos didn't meet with Downer until 4 days later on the 10th. Which means, if they're using the May the 6th date, then that means that the information was passed from Papagalopoulos to Erica Thompson. So now the question is, what exactly transpired in that conversation with Erica Thompson? And what transpired in the conversations earlier that day with Greg Baker and Terrence Dudley, the two DIA officers working out of the U.S. Embassy in London? And again, we can ask what actually conversations took place between Downer and Papagalopoulos on May the 10th. I mean, did Papagalopoulos and Downer even talk about Russia or dirt on Hillary Clinton? Or was that a conversation Papagalopoulos had with Erica Thompson on the 6th, or possibly these two DIA officers? It's very confusing because we have two things going on here. We're told that it was Papagalopoulos telling Downer. But if you read the Mueller report, it doesn't name Downer, nor does it have a name blacked out. It identifies the person that Papagalopoulos shared this information with as a representative of a foreign government. And the date on which that occurred was May the 6th. Papagalopoulos didn't meet Downer to the 10th. The only people he spoke with on the 6th was Erica Thompson, Downer's assistant, senior advisors, how she described herself, and of course these two DIA officers. So what's going on here? Who did Papagalopoulos say? Who did he tell that the Russians had dirt on Hillary? Was it Downer or was it Erica Thompson? Or was it these two guys here? Was it on the 6th or was it on the 10th? Did he say it at all? Did he say anything to any of these people about Russians having dirt at all? The only thing that we've got that we know from Papagalopoulos so far, because apparently he's not been asked this, it's not been drilled down on yet, but the only thing that we know about Papagalopoulos that he has confirmed is he did confirm that May the 10th was the date he met with Downer, and May the 6th is the date that he met with these two DIA officers and Erica Thompson. Now, Erica Thompson was also there on the 10th, but on the 6th, which is the date The Mueller report says that this information was transferred to a representative of a foreign government. Only Erica Thompson was there, not Downer. So someone needs to clean that up, don't you think? And they need to have a much deeper conversation with these two DIA agents and ask them who put them up to making contact with Papadopoulos. Now, who was in town on that day, May the 6th, through the entire week? Who was in town on both May the 6th through May the 10th? Who was there on both of those days in London? Bill Priestap, Peter's been stroking us' boss. He was there for a week. He was there during the 6th and the 10th. Do you think Priestap got with these two DIA guys and got them to contact Papadopoulos? Do you think he had any conversations with Erica Thompson? Priestap needs to be re-interviewed. Because I read the Priestap testimony and they didn't talk about this specifically. They talked about him going to London, but he just simply wouldn't talk about it very much. In fact, he wouldn't even reveal that it was London. We only know that because of other testimony given by other people, and we were able to figure it out. So there you go. Another riddle, and I'm sure as they dig deeper into the Mueller report and pull out more gems like this, we'll find more confusion. And there's a reason for this. This is not an accident. There's some reason why they did not want to name Downer and only use this phrase, representative of a foreign government, because they know that the Downer Papadopoulos narrative is already there, written in stone. But now they would have to completely reverse that and say, oh, well, it wasn't actually Downer that he talked to. It was actually his assistant, his senior advisor, Erica Thompson. Well, that changes a lot of things. That's another person you have to talk to. Was she recording Papadopoulos? Is there a recording of the Downer meeting? Is there a recording of the Erica Thompson meeting? Did these two DIA agents, did they record anything with Papadopoulos? There's a lot of questions that need to be asked here. A lot of investigation left to be done, and it sure as hell wasn't done by Mueller, was it? These are all open-ended questions. Again, they just gloss over it. And it's like this all through the Mueller report. I'm only like on page 70-something. I just don't have a lot of time to read it all. But I'm on page 70. And so far, I'm not impressed. Let's put it that way. You will learn more about what happened in the 2016 frame-up by reading my timeline than you will by reading the Mueller report. My timeline is far more interesting and overall accurate and covers the entire both sides of everything that was happening. With the Mueller report, you're getting a very, very, it's like they take an entire pie and throw away 90% of it, take a slice of it, and that's what they show you in the Mueller report. It's just like one piece of a much larger thing that's going on, and I'm only like 72, 73 pages into it, and this is already obvious to me. I don't even have to read the other 300 and some odd pages to figure out exactly what this Mueller report is. It's a very thin slice, a very thin view of a much larger story. And they only tell tiny, tiny little bits of the story and purposely leave out a lot of things to mislead or trick you. I certainly hope A.G. Barr, Horowitz, and the Republicans who are looking into this do not accept any of this vagueness or any of this stuff where they just leave all these things out. You got to fill in all the gaps, fill in all the holes to clearly understand the story. And this is one that needs to be cleaned up. Now, moving on, we have MSNBC caught up to Uncle Bob the Executioner this morning as he was leaving church on Easter Sunday. The reporter asked Uncle Bob if he would be testifying in front of Congress, and he said, no comment. The last thing in the world Uncle Bob wants is to be grilled in front of Congress. Not that he's worried about the Democrats. They're going to throw him nothing but softballs. He's worried about Meadows and Gates and Jordan and Ratcliffe, who will also be asking him questions. And they went on to badger, this reporter from MSNBC went on to badger Uncle Bob the Executioner, and from that point forward, he just didn't even say anything. He didn't say no comment or anything. He just clammed up. Did not say anything, just tried his best to ignore this reporter and get into the car and get the hell out of there. So clearly Uncle Bob is acting like a guy who really doesn't want to talk. He was acting like a guilty man, to be quite honest with you. He didn't have much to say, and now, of course, he's realizing that the very perps that carried his water for the past 2.5 years and the criminal left-wing media are now turning on him. That's right. He was supposed to deliver the goods, and he didn't do it. And now they hate him, and now they are going to tighten the screws down on him, as well as Republicans and Barr and everyone else. Uncle Bob made a huge mistake. He should have walked in there day one, looked at the dossier, shook his head and said, man, oh man, you guys you guys have a lot of problems, and I'm not even getting wrapped up in this deal. You no way, I'm out of here. And he should have walked up and said, I've looked into the dossier, the FISA thing, and to be quite honest with you, I don't see there's anything there, so I'm just going to terminate this investigation right now. There's just nothing to look at. All the evidence I've seen can't be proven true. It's some kind of a hoax, and all this stuff never should have happened. But I'm out of here. You guys can figure it out on your own. See ya. That's what he should have done. He's in a lot of trouble now. Things are going to get much, much worse for Uncle Bob the Executioner, I can assure you that. Adam Schiff on MSNBC this morning, he's now saying that they will not go forward with impeachment hearings. Of course, he got the word from Madam Botox. Shut it down, a-hole. Shut it down. It's political suicide. Schiff is not smart enough to know that. Madam Botox is smart enough to know that. And she shut him down. That's exactly what happened. That's my opinion, by the way, but it's right. Believe me. We also can tell from certain parts of the Mueller report that Rodenstein did authorize Uncle Bob the Executioner to investigate payments Manafort received from Ukraine. And I don't know how many of you saw that clip from Friday, I think it was Friday, where DeGeneva and his wife, Victoria Tensing, were on some show. I'm not sure what show it was, but Crystal Ball was the hack journalist who was hosting the roundtable discussion. And she suggested that Bob Barr is not a straight-up honest guy. And when she did that, she lit up DeGeneva. I don't know how many of you have seen this clip. It's up on the Gateway Pundit. At least it was on Sunday. You can probably still find it there. It's a clip. It's a must-see clip, really. Or just go to YouTube and type in Joe DeGeneva. You should see the clip there. I've never seen DeGeneva lose his cool like that, but he certainly did. I mean, that was the end of the interview. He went off on Crystal Ball. Basically said, hey, look, you're accusing the Attorney General of the United States of being dishonest, corrupt, or liar. Look, I've known the man for 30 years. He's one of the most honest people I've ever met. He's one of the best lawyers there is. He's a great Attorney General, and I'm not going to sit here and let you make those slanderous accusations against him. And I mean, DeGeneva went off on her big time. He went off on her so bad that ended the interview. You know, pretty much he was pissed. And even his wife was sitting there looking at him like, uh-oh, you've really pissed him off now. And I mean, I've never seen DeGeneva lose his cool, but he completely lost it. And so that's a very good clip if you want to see it. And it tells you something. DeGeneva has known Barr, he said, for 30 years. And he sure stuck up for him, I'll tell you that. He broke out both guns, and they were blazing. So, yeah, Barr and Mueller and anyone who got on the wrong side of the media on this deal are going to be targets. And Mueller is going to regret it because these are the people who've been carrying his water for 2.5 years. Now they're going to turn on him. Barr, of course, knew when he jumped into the fray that this is exactly what he was going to get. He's not surprised by any of this. He expected it. My guess is he's fully prepared for it, and I don't think he's going to be intimidated. If anything, he'll be more motivated. Now, I mentioned the other day that I would love to interview Uncle Bob the Executioner if he is foolish enough to sit himself down in front of a committee. I would love to be on that committee asking the questions. I have a lot of questions for him. Someone asked me if I would go through some of the questions I would ask Uncle Bob if I had a chance. I would probably need a 2-hour, 3-hour window to get through every question I ask him, but I could ask some very damaging questions in just a couple of minutes. I could have him probably looking pretty bad. So I am going to go through some questions. These are ones that just come off the top of my head. These are what we call opening questions. These are the type of questions that you ask to begin a series of questions. Each question here you ask, and it's usually a question you already know the answer to. It's a setup question. I'm setting him up. I ask him a general setup question, which I probably already know the answer to, and then when he answers it, then I begin asking a series of follow-up questions, which will eventually lead me to the hook question, where I put my hook in him. So most of these are pretty obvious where they're going. Some of them I don't have very much time to try to just give you a brief nudge of where I would want to go with it and why I'm asking the question. But most of these are self-explanatory. But these are just some of the questions I would have for Uncle Bob the Executioner. First, I would ask Uncle Bob, when did your team, specifically you, Uncle Bob, learn that the dossier was funded by the Rotten Reverend Clinton and the DNC? This is a setup question because we know that the whole reason for the investigation, we're told, that began on July 31st was the Papadopoulos meets Downer. We now know there's a problem with that, but more importantly, Jeannie Rhee and Weissman, his two main lead attorneys, were made aware of the dossier somewhere around July, late July, early August of 2016. They knew it 7-8 months before they even joined the Mueller team that the dossier was bunk. This is why I asked Uncle Bob, when did your team, and specifically you, Uncle Bob, learn that the dossier was funded by the Rotten Reverend Clinton and the DNC? That would lead me to a whole series of questions, which I eventually would set the hook. What evidence, other than that found in the dossier, did you have to investigate Papadopoulos, Flynn, and Carter Page? And if there was other information, where did that information come from? And I ask this question because if you look at the first memo, this sort of scope memo, Rodenstein specifically gives Uncle Bob the authority to investigate Papadopoulos, Flynn, and Carter Page. Well, the only information or evidence that we're aware of where these three individuals are brought up as having been involved in something is in the dossier. But all through the Mueller report, you rarely even see the word dossier, Confusion GPS, or even Christopher Steele. So the point of this question is to drill down on getting to the bottom of why Uncle Bob avoids talking about the dossier, yet his whole report is based on the characters whose names are only, as far as we know, were brought up in the dossier. So if there's other information, this is what I'm trying to get to. What other than the dossier did you have to go after these guys? And if you didn't have anything other than that, then why not talk about the dossier? And of course, there's more that goes to that, to the legitimacy of the dossier, its origins. That's where you want to go with that question. Next question, why was the dossier used as the primary evidence to get the FISA on Carter Page and to justify your investigation when the dossier has never been verified? Boom, that's the question that Horowitz is now going to answer for us here in a few weeks. And the answer is going to be, they had nothing. This is why a bunch of them are going to be indicted. But why did Uncle Bob, in this case, why did he continue? If he knew this a long time ago, why did he continue the investigation? Which is where I want to go with this question. His answer, I would get his answer. I say, okay, well then, why did you continue with the investigation? You see? Here's a good question. What was the basis for your investigation? Again, this forces him to either say the dossier or something else. And there was nothing else. I'm constantly putting him in this straitjacket that he can't get out of. Because I know that I know the answer to the question. There's nothing else. In the course of your witch hunt, Uncle Bob, did you identify the unlawful leaks of classified information? If so, did you follow up and identify the source of those leaks? Why not? The answer to that question is going to be no. And he's going to say, well, it wasn't part of my scope. But then I would go into drilling down on a bunch of questions about why, if he doesn't understand where the information came from and how it came about, then how could he use it? And I would go through all the examples in his report where he uses things that we know came from leaks, and therefore he's using unverified or leaked information. And you have to know the source of your information. You see, I'm trying to get to a source and make him look bad at the same time. Did James Comey improperly handle classified information by releasing his memos, at least 3 of which contained classified information? That's a gotcha question. We already know the answer to that question. Yes, 3 of those memos were classified. So therefore, if they were classified memos, then of course releasing them to his friend was improperly handling classified information. I'm giving him a simple question that he cannot answer truthfully without indicting James Comey. And then my next question is, well, then why aren't you indicting James Comey? You admit yourself that he improperly handled classified information by releasing 3 reports, releasing the Comey memos, 3 of which contained classified information. You see? There we go. In looking for Russian interference in the 2016 election, did you identify any other countries that were involved in the 2016 U.S. presidential elections, such as the UK, Australia, Estonia, Italy, or Ukraine? You see, this opens up a whole Pandora's box right here, because there's no way he could have gone through his investigation and not discovered all these countries, especially Ukraine, having been involved. He's going to have to answer the question, yeah, we did identify other countries that may have been involved. And my next question is who? And then my next question is about each one, what did they do? You see, this takes him down a trail where he doesn't want to go. Did you identify during your investigation the genesis of the Trump-Russia narrative? And of course, we know that's Ukraine. And then I asked him, ever heard the name Alexandra Chalupa? If so, what role did she play in providing information that was used to justify the investigation? She is directly tied to the Manafort issue, and that was the #1 issue Uncle Bob worked on, taking down Manafort. You can't take down Manafort without getting the information that brought him down. That was the stuff that came from the Ukraine. And who was the operative? Alexandra Chalupa. You had to have run into Alexandra Chalupa, but nothing is said about Alexandra Chalupa. She's left completely out. This is the way that I bring Uncle Bob into the Ukrainian Pandora's box that he doesn't want to go in, take him down the rabbit hole, and force him to talk about Chalupa and all the things that were going on in Ukraine. Was Chalupa registered as a foreign agent? Was Chalupa registered as a foreign agent? See, I'm guessing she wasn't. Well, if she's not registered as a foreign agent, then why is she not being charged? Like all the other people were threatened. Papadopoulos, Manafort, Carter Page, all threatened with the FARA violation. Why was it Chalupa threatened with the FARA violation? Uncle Bob, did you interview Henry Greenberg? Did you ask him if he was working for the FBI when he made contact with Stone and Caputo? Uncle Bob, did you interview Stephen Halper? Did you ask Halper who he was working for when he was initiating contact with Papadopoulos, Page, and Flynn? Uncle Bob, did any FBI or CIA or DOJ officials or any other key players provide false testimony to Congress, the Inspector General, or to your team? If so, who? And remember, Uncle Bob, you're under oath. Uncle Bob, was Papadopoulos entrapped or framed? How about Carter Page? How about Michael Flynn? And remember, Uncle Bob, you are under oath. In the course of your investigation, Uncle Bob, did you discover a group known as the Multi-Agency Task Force or the Six-Agency Task Force? Uncle Bob, the Strzok Page text made reference to a comment by Lisa Page where she said that the White House wants to know everything. Uncle Bob, did you interview Obama administration officials to see what role they had in the investigation into the Trump team? If not, why not? Uncle Bob, Operation Crossfire Hurricane began on July the 31st, 2016. Did you identify any investigations or activities to surveil the Trump campaign that were happening before July 31st, 2016? If so, what were they and what governments or agencies were conducting those investigations? that one really takes you down the rabbit hole and blows up Operation Crossfire Hurricane and the origins of the investigation right there. I would have him in handcuffs on this question. Did you identify the source of the leak of the Flynn call with Ambassador Kislyak? Did you even investigate that? If not, why not? And if you did, why is it not in your report? Uncle Bob, did you identify the private contractors that were granted access to the FISA database from October 2015 to April 2016 when Mike Rogers, NSA director, shut it down? Uncle Bob, did you have any conversations or contact with Rodenstein or Comey during the week after Comey's firing and your being appointed special counsel? That's a question I do not know the answer to, but I suspect that they did have conversations, and I would love to hear those conversations, because I'm better than 50-50 believe that this whole thing was orchestrated, and that question right there is designed to get to the meat of Uncle Bob's corruption. Uncle Bob, Manafort was fined because of a leak. I'm sorry, Manafort was fired because of a leak by Ukrainian officials Sergei Lyshenko and Artem Sitnik. They leaked it to Michael Isikoff of Yahoo News. They leaked to those two about the payments that were made to Manafort by Ukraine officials tied to Viktor Yanukovych. Now, Lyshenko has since been convicted of interfering in the 2016 presidential election in order to help Hillary and hurt Trump. Uncle Bob, have you interviewed Lyshenko or the prosecutor in that case? Oh boy. I just want to get him into the conversation here about everything that was going on in Ukraine and the origins. This is another one of those questions he definitely does not want to go down this road. Uncle Bob, are you aware that Lyshenko was not only a source for Isikoff, but he was also a source for Chalupa, the DNC, Hillary Clinton's campaign, and also Confusion GPS? Are you aware of that? You see, Lyshenko was a major source. He was the reason Manafort was fired. He's the one that was part of the Trump-Russia delusion narrative, and he had contact with all these people: Chalupa, the DNC, Hillary Clinton, Confusion GPS. And I would like to know if Uncle Bob was aware of all that. I'm pretty sure he had to be. Uncle Bob, why did you charge Veselnitskaya before interviewing her? She was charged by the Southern District of New York, Preet Bharara, which obviously made sure that she would stay out of the country. Did you make that happen, or was that Preet Bharara on his own? This is the same Preet Bharara that gave special permissions for Veselnitskaya to enter the country in the first place, where a few days later she shows up in the Trump Tower meeting. How convenient. You give her special access to the country when you want her here, but then when you want to interview her, you file charges on her knowing good and well that'll keep her from ever coming back. More needs to be dug into on that issue. Uncle Bob, your report does not mention that Veselnitskaya was working for Fusion GPS or that Veselnitskaya met with Glenn Simpson before and after the meeting. Why not? Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I still have some more good questions, but we simply don't have time. So maybe I'll get to them on another day. Maybe there'll be more questions, but there you go. That's just a primer for where I would go, and I would have this thing sorted out pretty quickly. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. See ya. Bye.